Hello! In today's video, I'll show you how to create a workbook. Within that workbook, we'll create a series of simple spreadsheets. This will help you to understand what income you can have from your pensions, your savings, your individual savings accounts, your wages, any other income streams, how you can compare that against your expenses, create a simple expense budget, and then at the end of it, come up with something like this that I'm showing on the screen, that shows you your income versus expenses and what your cash flow looks like at the end of each month. If you're interested to know how, keep watching. Here we go then. Let's create a new document here. I'm using LibreOffice, previously known as OpenOffice. So I'll be using this open document spreadsheet. If you're using Microsoft applications, you can run a Microsoft Excel worksheet. And likewise, if you're running Google Docs, you can use the Google Sheets application. A good method to use for file name is start with the year, then the month, January, and then the day is 21st. That way you can easily find the files in date order. Let's open it up. So I'm going to create a new sheet in this workbook. I'm going to call it Scratchpad. Okay, and I'll use this Scratchpad just for jotting down my notes as I create the worksheets. And really, I'm just, at the moment, what I'm thinking is, I've got my pension in Interactive Investor, and I have a workplace pension. Make this a little bit bigger so it's easier for you to see. What other income have I got? We have child benefit, my wages, my wife's wages. These are just notes to remind me so I can start thinking about income streams. Let's give it that a title. Call that income. Call this expenses. So I need to create a monthly budget. For the monthly budget, I've already got a spreadsheet I've been using for a while. I can show you what that looks like. Share that in the comments down below as a link, and then you can just go and grab that if you want to use it for your own budgeting purposes. What we want to do is create a sheet for each of the income streams, and then one for the monthly budget, and eventually we'll have a summary sheet which will show the income versus expenses, and then should show us what our cash flow is. Start with Interactive Investor, self-invested personal pension. Now we've got a decision to make here. We can put the months along the top here, and then have each month we can show what the fund looks like. We can show what we're drawing down. Before we do anything, let's rename this Interactive Investor self-invested personal pension. So let's leave some space here in case we want to add more rows at the top or more columns to the left. So we'll start down here. We'll go with months along the top. We can always change this later if we need to. Let's go with January, February, March. You only need to create the first three. And then if you select them, you see this little handle appear here. You pick that up, and it knows what the next cell would be because of that sequence, January, February, March. So let's drag this to create the full year. And then what we'll do above here, we merge these cells. Again, there'll be a different button. If you're using a different application, just put the year in here, 2026. Let's highlight those in a different color so we know it's a group. And let's make it bold as well so we know it's the title. There we go. So we've got the basic setup now for 1 year. What we need on the left here are some row headings. I think what we'll do as well is we'll make these rows height slightly bigger, slightly easier to see what's going on. Make that one narrow, make this one a bit wider, just makes reading a little bit easier. So let's call this fund value, month start. We're going to withdraw. My expectation is the most I will draw every month is one time. If you're planning to draw more than once per month, then you'll need more rows than this. And then interest earned. And then actually let's add a row in here. Let's move these two down. This is deposits or transfer in. And then fund value, month end. Increase that a little bit. Make it a bit easier to read. Increase these a little. Before we start putting anything in here, let's format these to currency. Fund value month start. for January, that'll have to be the actual value of what our fund is at the moment. February will equal the previous end value for the month. Let's start to add values in here. I'll just put some fictitious numbers in here for now. Let's say it's 250,000. Start. Before we do anything though, we don't want decimal places, that's too much detail, so let's just select all of this. And what we'll do is we'll delete 2 decimal places, so it's whole numbers. Obviously if you're in a different country, different currency, you'll use your currency, but for the purpose of this video, I'm in the UK, so I'm using Great British Pounds. Deposit transfer in. At the moment, I don't have a regular deposit into my pension. If you did, you've got a standing order set up, something like this, into your personal pension, then you'll put that value in there. Let's put £250 a month. Don't plan to withdraw anything at the moment. Interest earned. There's 2 ways you can do this. You can estimate it, which is what I'm going to do, or you can put the actual value in once you get that interest earned into your personal pension. Let's put a new value up here, monthly interest rate, and then let's assume it's 4% per annum, which is roughly what it is at the moment. That's probably the highest. 0.04, divide that by 12. That's our monthly interest rate, roughly 0.33%. So what we can then do is say, okay, interest earned equals the fund value at the start of the month minus any withdrawals multiplied by our monthly interest rate, which is 0.33%. Now we want this reference here, D6, to always look at D6. So when we copy cell D15 across to E15, F15, etc., when we copy that across, we want this to be an absolute reference rather than relative. And to make that happen, what we do is we put a $sign in front of the D that says keep this as an absolute reference. So each time we copy across, show you for example, it remembers that it should always reference D6. Fund value month end, so that's the total of your start plus any transfer ins minus any withdrawals plus any interest earned. So that then becomes your fund value. If I drawn out £500, for example, then you can see here we're still showing an increase because the interest earned and the deposit. If I draw out 2,500, then you can see the fund value starts to reduce. So let's keep that at 0 for now. So fund value month start for February will be the same as the fund value month end for January. So let's make that the same. Then what we do now, copy these 4 cells across to February, and you can see that the fund is starting to grow here. Let's assume we don't put any deposits or transfer ins, and then you can see now all we're doing is earning interest. Let's assume as well we're going to draw out £2,500 per month, and you can see the fund value starts to reduce. Let's assume we're adding £500 per month for now. So what we can do, this is an actual value, but this is calculated based on this value. So we can copy this now across to the rest of the year. And then you can see the value here is increasing. The next step is let's put this in an outline box, outline border, so we can see that that's all 1 year. If you're using Microsoft Excel and you've got OneDrive enabled, then you can enable autosave. I haven't for this, so I need to save every now and then manually. You probably should change the interest rate. The interest rate can vary, so my thinking at the moment is let's add a specific row here called monthly interest rate. And what that allows us to do is to modify the interest rate as we need to. Let's make this a hard-coded value at the start, 0.33%. Let's change it here. So we don't need this one anymore. Let's get rid of that. On interest earned, we need to modify this. Instead of being D6, it is actually this here now, and we need to copy that across. So add in the monthly interest rate. So we'll make that the same as every month, and then what we can do is at the moment you can see that's hard-coded value, and then each month it just copies the monthly interest rate from the month before. If that changes, That goes down to 0.28, for example. Then you can see the follow-on months. We'll just use that until you modify the value again. Let's leave it at 0.33%. And that 0.33%, you can, well, I can show you where that's come from. So if the annual interest rate is 4%, which is 0.04, divide that by 12, that gives you the 0.33%. If you look at your pension provider, they should be able to tell you, or you should be able to calculate from their monthly interest, their average annual interest rate, what the monthly rate should be. Okay, so we just need to modify this calculation here. So that monthly interest rate now is the fund value at the start, plus any deposits or transfers in, minus any withdrawals, and then you times that by the monthly interest rate. Oh, missed off the leading bracket there. And we just copy that across to the other rows. So now let's just make sure that's still correct. It is. Let's make sure this one's still correct. It is. Let's put our border back around here. For some reason we lost that when we did a copy paste. Let's just put a line under here, and we can see that that applies to the whole of that year. Actually put a border around that. There we go. Now obviously you can format this however you want to. I like this fund value at the end to be the key information. So what I'll do is I will highlight this different color, like line 1, there we go. And let's put a border around that just to neaten it up. Great, that's looking good. Let's save that. I've created this small column here just a moment ago, and that's just to create a separation between the years. Let's copy all of this, including that last column, and paste it here. So that's a duplicate of 2026. What we need to do is make sure that that is the correct year. So let's make that the same as last year, which is column, just cell D9 2026 plus 1, which will take us to 2027. And then the other thing we need to do is this hard-coded value here, we need to make that the same as the month end for December. Everything else should be the same. I suppose what we could do actually, let's make this pick up the previous month. Then what that does, stops us having to type in the value each month. So this is hard-coded because it's the start of the spreadsheet, and then it picks up the previous month. Just copies that. So if you decide in May you want to reduce your contributions, in the following months it will reduce as well. Let's keep it all at 500 for now. Let's do the same for this one. So January 2027 will be the same as December 2026. And then let's do the same here, make that a copy of the previous month all the way through to December. Put our border back in here a moment. I think what we'll do as well, let's copy this down to here. What that does, I'll show you what that does. Copies from the previous month. So if we say we're going to withdraw £200 every month, it automatically populates each month. Do the same with 2027. So that withdrawal, just check, it's the same as 014 here. We hit F2, yeah, just picking that up. All we need to do now is copy all of this, and then that's the first 2 years, 2026, 2027. Let's keep pasting that in here. 28, 29. We'll just do it for 10 years for now. 2036. Just do a quick sanity check on here. So let's make sure that January 2036 is picking up from December 2035, which it is. Let's make sure these are also ET13, ET14. Perfect. And then finally, fund month end should be all of that. That plus that minus that plus that. Perfect. Let's go back to Scratchpad. So we've done this. Let's just highlight that. Now I need to create one for a Scottish Widows pension, which is my only other pension. So if I copy that sheet, you can either copy and paste or duplicate, rename that to be Scottish Widows. All you need to do here, change the fund value. So at the moment, let's just say it's 25,000. I'm not planning to deposit anything else in, not planning to withdraw anything. You can see here, look, everything copies across all the way through to 2036. Do the same for any other pensions you have. You might have half a dozen pensions if you change jobs regularly over your career. Back in, I don't know, it might have been 2019 maybe, I consolidated. I think I had 5 or 6 pensions into one. I pulled everything into my Scottish Widows workplace pension scheme. And then when I started working part-time and then planned to draw down on my pension, I moved everything out of Scottish Widows into Interactive Investor. So that's that one done. Do that for any of yours. Child benefits, so this is incomes. Let's update our Scratchpad a minute. These 3 are incomes, so let's move these over here. Let's put investments here. So let's assume we have a stocks and shares ISA. Let's assume let's start with 20,000. Let's assume that we've already invested the maximum we can in this ISA for the year. Monthly interest rate, I think for stocks and shares ISA is quite high at the moment. So I think the estimated average annual interest rate is something like 12%. Just get that right, 12%, which means it's 1% per month. And let's duplicate that and rename it. I've also got an invest engine, stocks and shares ISA. Let's assume you've got less in that one, 10,000. And then let's create one for cash ISA, rename that sheet. Let's assume we've got 5,000 in there. Interest rate will be much lower for a cash ISA. Will be something like 3.5, 3.8%. Let's put 3.8%. And then you can duplicate this for however many investments you have. I also have a investment account, which is outside of my ISA, GIA, General Investment Account. This isn't as tax efficient as an ISA. Let's assume we have 15,000 in there. These numbers aren't real. Next thing to do, we've done this, we've done that, we've added that one, added this one. Let's create sheets now for income. The best way to do that is one single sheet for income and then one single sheet for expenses. Let's add that in now. So let's take this one, duplicate that. For now, we'll delete all of these years from 2027 to 2036. We can recreate them in a moment because we're going to modify that rows on the spreadsheet. Let's call this income. Don't need any of this. We do know what the total will be. It'll be total of all income. Get rid of all of this for now. So let's start. Interactive Investor, SIPP drawdown, Scottish Widows, Trading 212, Stocks and Shares ISA. That's a withdrawal rather than a drawdown. We'll keep doing this for the others. Other sources of income, child benefit. You've got other sources of income, just add it in. So this value here, this is where we start referencing the other sheets. So this needs to be the value in here, and we can just copy that across like so. Let's do the same for Scottish Widows. Same with Trading 212, Invest Engine, Cash ISA, General Investment Account. Okay, this is where we can hard code some values. So child benefit for 2026. So this will vary depending on how many children you have, whether they're in education or not, what age they are. It's £104. Let's just get rid of the zeros on that. We don't need those trailing zeros. Let's copy this across, and then if that changes, we can modify the value. Try that again. It didn't work for some reason. There we go, that's better. Don't know why it's put those zeros back in. Let's get rid of them again. My wages, at the moment, that's nothing. Duty wages, at the moment, that's nothing. If you've got regular payments from other places, then add them in here. All we need to do now is add everything up. So this becomes the sum of everything in this column. And then we can copy that across. So what we have now is income per month based on these potential income streams. Next thing to do, replicate this for the next 10 years. So copy this, paste it here. So these drawdown values pick up from the previous sheets. These values, let's copy them across from here. And then that should pick up from that one, yeah. All of these can copy across from these December values. So let's copy that, paste it down here. Now we've done that, let's select all of this. Oh, sorry, one moment, I forgot to update this. So that is the previous year plus 1, 2027. Now we can pick this up, copy that, and then 28, 2036. Let's just do it for the next 10 years. Go back to our Scratchpad. So we complete the income. Next thing to do is work out monthly budget for expenses. Let's copy this sheet, duplicate, let's call it expenses. This is the one that will probably take the most time. Let's get rid of all of this for a moment. Get rid of all this. Zero everything in here. There we go. All we need to do is populate this column here with all the expenses we can think of that we have to pay out each month. So far we've made pretty good progress. So we've created all of these investment spreadsheets. We've created an income spreadsheet with these 3 plus a few others. Create this. Then what we need to do now is create the expenses spreadsheet. Best way to do this is go and look at your previous bank statements for the last couple of months. Maybe if you've got payments which are less regular than monthly, just go back a few months, pull those expenses out which are regular, put them in here. Don't forget about things like cash you use for things like going to the cinema, eating out. Think about things like going to the pub. If you go out to the pub with your mates once or twice a month, add something in for that. What I generally do is allocate, say, £100 a month to myself, £100 a month to my wife, and that's what we call spending money, and that money will pay for things like going to the pub, going out for lunch, things like this. Okay, I'll bring you back once I've filled in this expenses spreadsheet. Speak to you soon. Bye for now. Okay, we're looking like we're there now. Let's put a total in here. Add up this total column. Copy that across. All we need to do now, make sure these sums are adding up properly. Let's do a quick sanity check. Yep. Like we did before, copy this forward to future years. Let's modify this so that it increases the year by 1 each time. Equals that plus 1. Let's copy this across from here. Copy that down. Also copy this across. Just if we change the name on this side, it'll automatically update it for every year. What we do then is copy this until we're up to the year 2036. And then that aligns with the income worksheet. 2036, that gives us 10 years of forecast information, cash flow data. Let's go back, just check our Scratchpad. Monthly budget, done. That kind of is the basics of setting up the spreadsheets. We've got pensions here, got the investment accounts here. If you've got any bank account savings, stuff like that, add those in. You can just duplicate these and change the values accordingly. Got our list of income, which is linked to these income streams down here. And then got a list of all our costs each month, which we're calling our expenses, which are significant. So currently our income is nowhere near what our expenses are. We need to create a summary sheet now, which pulls in the income versus expenses, and then that will show us whether we're in credit or in debit each month, depending on what the income and the expenses look like. Let's do that next. Let's copy one of these, doesn't matter which one. Call this cash flow summary. We really only need 2 lines, so let's delete all of these. We'll leave 3 lines just in case we suddenly realize we need 3 lines. First line is called income. Second line is called expenses. Third line, call it spare for now. Clear all of this to start with. And what you can also do is just get rid of all of these, because we need to recreate these with the correct formula in one moment. Let's delete all of those. So our income from January, this we need to lift from the income spreadsheet here and make sure we're in the right month and year, and it's this value there. Expenses, again, similar thing, go to the expenses sheet, make sure we're in the right year and month, and then down the bottom here, lift out this total. This should already be the sum, which it is. Now all we need to do is copy this across to the rest of the year. Let's get rid of that, we don't need that row. Let's put our border back in. So this is currently showing as a sum. We need to correct that. It needs to be the income minus expenses. That gives us a negative value, and it goes red, which is great. That's what we want to see. So at the moment, this is showing us that we're in trouble. Over the year, we're going to be running out of money pretty quickly. Final thing, let's copy this. Paste it here. We just need to correct this so that it increases the year by 1 each time. So 2026 plus 1. This should be picking up from the spreadsheet's income and expenses. Let's just do a sanity check. Let's choose June. So June 2027 says it's picking up from X31 on the income. X31, June, there we go. It's there, it's fine. All we need to do now is copy this, paste it for the next 10 years. 2033. If you know a faster way of doing this, then add a note in the comment, let me know. I'm always willing to learn. And finally, 2036. Go back to the beginning of that page. So the aim of the game here is change your income strategy, increase this value to make this 0, or you can reduce your expenses to make this 0, or a combination of both. Increase your income, reduce your expenses. Let's start with expenses. All of these costs for me, these are the obvious places where I could save. So for the purposes of this example, let's set that to 0. Let's set that to 0. Holidays aren't really negotiable. We definitely need those. So let's keep those in. And then obviously having fun is mightily important. And then obviously Julie and I, we need money to live month on month. So what that's done is reduced our expenses significantly. So you can see now we're only £2,900 over our expenses versus income. Income's really low. Let's try and fix that. This is our income spreadsheet. What I should have done earlier is in these top sections here, these values are lifted from the previous spreadsheets. So what I'd recommend is you shade them in a different color just to remind you that. And what we can also do as well is put a red border around. So we put a red around there just to remind us these values are lifted from these sheets. In this example, again, what I will do is, because in the example I put most of the cash was in, for example, the Interactive Investor SIPP, Scottish Widows, stocks and shares ISAs, all pretty low value. So let's take the money from here, look at our expenses and cash flow again. So we're short of £2,900. So it's pretty straightforward. We're going to withdraw £2,900 from this account. We're not going to deposit any money in. You can see here that £250,000 is now being reduced by 2,900. However, we do get the benefit of interest on that £243,100. We get £824 interest at this monthly rate. So we end up with £247,924 at the end of the month, or by the beginning of the next month, and then we continue to draw down. This withdrawal is automatically populated in this income sheet, and it will do the same for these other investment worksheets. And then that populates your total income here, which populates your cash flow total income here. So we managed to balance the books. In this example, we can see that we'll be drawing down regularly on our Interactive Investor self-invested personal pension. You can see in row 17 here, the fund value is gradually decreasing. And if we keep going to the right, assuming you're continuing to withdraw the same amount every month and not deposit any new funds, then this will continue to dwindle. Eventually, looking at the values here, you can see that by the year 2034, we'll have run out of money in our Interactive Investor Fund. Over time, though, what we'll find is that the withdrawal rate will vary here, and you might also, looking on the income spreadsheet, you might find you've got additional income happening here. So for example, when I reach the age of 67, I will also start to receive, assuming it's still in place, the UK state pension. That's it. That's all I've got for you on this one. I'll add a link down below to the spreadsheet. Feel free to download it. This is in LibreOffice format. If I can, I'll save it in format for Google Sheets, and if I can, I'll save it in formats for Microsoft Excel. Not sure if I can do that, but if I can, I'll make sure the links are in the description. Hopefully this was useful. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.